It's critical for all of us to understand and recognize our implicit biases, specifically as they relate to young people, right? So there is a great deal of research on implicit racial bias in the criminal legal system. There is a subset of that research on young people and the perceptions of adolescents of color as being criminal.
It's the outside narratives that we receive, whether they're explicit or not. They don't even have to be spoken. How many times do we hear stories about Black folks who say, like, people just, they walk away, they move their purse, their bag, they see them tense, right? They see them brace. That when you think about the impact of those chronic experiences and the narratives that you're inheriting in that, which are, you're not welcome here, you're unsafe, your body is bad, your body is violent.
One of the most important studies that everyone should know is Dr. Philip Atiba Goff and his colleagues did a study called The Essence of Innocence, but it was specifically about the ways in which both civilians and law enforcement tend to perceive Black males as significantly older than they are. In fact, more than 4.5 years older than they actually are. And so when we think about a Tamir Rice, who was the 12-year-old boy who was shot and killed in Cleveland, the prosecutors and the police officers talked about how Tamir, quote unquote, looked older than he actually was. All of those studies have a deep impact on how we interpret normal adolescent behaviors. Also in how we interpret facial expressions, ambiguous behaviors, what decisions we make about what type of response or punishment is appropriate for a child.
In a Black home, stereotypically, but sometimes actually, you don't have a voice. You what your parents say or else. And then you go into the street or the school, and then you try to get a voice, and then that gets shut down, and you never get to say anything, right? For those who went on to college, like myself, you kind of learn again how to fit in, how to stay invisible, and then you kind of get moved along, so to speak. Minoritized Black kids would get to college and have a career and check the boxes. Then you get to management opportunities or executive leadership opportunities. And you're used to checking boxes, being invisible, and that moving you along. But that's not the skill you need at those senior management, executive management. You need more dynamic, aggressive, fearless, upfront. And that's who you ultimately are competing against, or that's who's evaluating you, and you don't meet that. And then you got a degree, you got a master's, but your personality type doesn't fit that executive profile, so to speak. And you don't thrive in that space. And even if you could, they don't see you that way because they need that person who is going to be a little bit more aggressive or what have you.
Well, but it's the traits you're describing, those socialized attitudes.
That's exactly the crux of the point, right? They're the more charismatic, the more fearless, the more aggressive, and they don't get the benefit of that.
We need caregivers and adults to be attuned and to notice and to respond to what our bodies are telling other people. We need to help those experiences have meaning by naming them and by being curious about them. I worked with a kid one time who was 12, and he would get incredibly aggressive at school. And this was a kid that if we couldn't find the right support for him, he was highly likely to end up within the juvenile justice system. And he needed to be able to move his body in ways that other people told him he couldn't. In a lot of these settings, those behaviors, the response is like, we have to confine it, we have to restrain it, but we had to provide the scaffolding so that he could do it safely. It was about helping him keep his body safe and other people's bodies safe. So something as easy as like he would come in and be incredibly aggressive and screaming and punching and kicking and throwing. And rather than saying, don't do that, to be able to say, your body is telling me how incredibly angry you are right now and that you need to kick some stuff. Let me help you do that. But here's the deal. Your body has to be safe and my body has to be safe, or we got to call it. And so we would channel it, right? I mean, you do have to have tools to do that. But for him, it felt like, you're helping me name the feeling that's underneath this. I'm overwhelmed and I don't know why. You're saying, like, I'm not here to to shame you and shut you down and yell at you. I'm curious about why.